Blaze logo.
Army Sergeant Bowe Bergdahl was released 1 week ago this Saturday after 5 years in captivity. Many questions, though, still remain unanswered. Now, my next guest is New York Times best-selling author Brad Thor. He wrote a fabulous, in-depth piece over at TheBlaze.com detailing the capture and release of Sergeant Bergdahl. Now, Brad, my first question is, you discussed this in your piece. Was the White House directly or indirectly involved in some sort of financial exchange in Bergdahl's release? I mean, did it, in other words, did the administration aid the enemy?
Well, that's a big question. And then, as a matter of fact, it's probably the biggest question right now that is not being asked by the mainstream media, Dana, because we learned at Fox.com today, it's actually been confirmed that up as late as December, they were considering paying a ransom for him. Now, what doesn't make sense to me is it's all been admitted that the Haqqani terror network, which I describe as being like organized crime, but with Muslims, 80%
Right.
Sopranos, 20% Al-Qaeda. They're the guys that had Bowe Bergdahl. Yet it's the Taliban, the Afghan Taliban, different group, that got the prisoners returned to them. So we need to ask, cui bono, what was in it for the Haqqanis? And the Haqqanis in every single transaction always want money, including 2008 when they had kidnapped New York Times reporter David Rode. So for the Haqqanis to just hand over Bowe Bergdahl for nothing makes no sense at all.
Well, and kind of going along in that vein, Brad, the video that was released today, of course, the Taliban released it, and we're looking at this video footage of Bowe Bergdahl. He's sitting in this vehicle. He's getting ready to be handed over to the Americans from his Taliban captors. One of the impetus for this expeditious movement and the reason why we had to immediately do this now, why all of a sudden we were making this trade, was because, as we heard from Susan Rice, well, he was so gravely ill. They made it sound, Brad, like he was on his deathbed. I'm looking at this video. I'm seeing a dude who looks like he was well fed. He looks like he walked of his own strength over to the helicopter where the Americans were. I've never seen anything like this. In fact, I was having this conversation with my producer here, thinking, I've never seen a captive like this treated so well. Is it because of the Haqqani involvement?
Well, I'll tell you, here's what I know from my intel sources, Dana, is that towards the end of his captivity, he had tried during the course of his captivity to escape a couple of times. But towards the end, he had vowed not to try to escape anymore, and they released some of the restrictions on him. He was able to move around a little bit, get outside a little bit. And the only reporting that I know of, the only intelligence that he had a health problem was within the first 6 months of his captivity, where he had things that hostages often do in a foreign country. He had some dysentery, so stomach problems. He had some respiratory issues during the first 6 months. That's the only illness stuff I've heard of. Doesn't mean something didn't exist, but from my sources, who are the guys putting this stuff up the chain of command from Afghanistan, that's the only stuff I heard of.
Wow. So if there was money exchanged, Brad, how is that even possible? It's not like they can just send him a check snail mail. How does that even work?
Well, that's the question that needs to be put to the Obama administration. Was there any money paid any way at all, directly or indirectly? And I don't care if it was cash, gold, diamonds. Did it happen through a third party? Did it go through the Qataris? I don't know how it happened, but I'm telling you, with the Haqqanis, there's always money. But nobody has put it to the White House to say, was there anything in this for the Haqqanis? If so, what was it?
The other big question in this, aside from the possible financial exchange with the Haqqani network, is when I look at Sergeant Andrew Tamarisi sitting in a Tijuana jail, when I think of Clint Loras in Leavenworth and Michael Behenna, why Bowe Bergdahl? Brad, why him?
Well, exactly. Why him? Why after 5 years was it all of a sudden important? I think that they just, listen, they get caught flat-footed all the time. As I've said on Twitter, does anything ever catch the White House on guard? So I think they thought they'd see the spontaneous outpouring that existed for Osama bin Laden's killing, and that didn't happen this time. Yet the White House had access to the file. They know everything about this guy. So this response by the American public shouldn't come as any surprise. And Dana, one other thing that I'll add here that we're not seeing in the press as well is the Haqqani's banker. One of the Haqqani brothers was killed in a suburb of Islamabad in November. This is the guy responsible for moving money into the organization. So they were cut off at the head for money. The Haqqanis were desperate for money. And not only that, the Haqqanis have a very high-level person of their own that's in captivity. We caught him back in 2011. If the Haqqanis were going to agree to anything, they would agree to having this guy out. And like like the Haqqanis, if we said, no, you can't have that guy back, they'd say, well, then you got to pay us more. I'm telling you, there was some sort of deal in this for the Haqqanis that the White House doesn't want to talk about. I promise you.
Yeah, because of these five Gitmo detainees, one of them was Haqqani, right?
One of them had relationships with the Haqqanis. I've been told that he has family in the Haqqani network, but that he had affiliations there, that he was a Taliban but had these connections with the Haqqanis. Not a hardcore Haqqani fighter. And as a matter of fact, one of my intel guys told me he actually had a romantic homosexual involvement with one of the Haqqanis' inner circle. A guy named Rafiq Haziz. I don't have the name exactly in front of me. I believe it's it, but I put it in the Blaze article.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and these five individuals, is this, because the trade for this, the term POW, and this is the other thing you mentioned when you said that the White House is always being caught as flat-footed. I don't understand how that is, Brad, because they've known about this. 2009, there were soldiers being told that they had to sign gag orders. And then Michael Hastings' piece in 2012. How are they surprised?
Well, and again, what we're seeing is these gag orders, these non-disclosure agreements. It's the same thing we saw in Benghazi, right? So when they get in trouble, it's always clamp down, tamp down, don't let anybody talk. But listen, this is the healthcare.gov rollout of foreign policy. How did they not know that the website was going to go kerplunk? They are completely inept. They are incompetent. They are ignorant. They don't know what they're doing. The economy hasn't recovered. Show me one thing from the Obama administration that American people should be saying, we want more of that. That's great. Give us more. They haven't done anything right.
Chuck Todd said on MSNBC that someone in the Obama administration, he just casually had tweeted, well, or said in an interview, one of the aides came and told him that, well, they're trying to swift Bowe Bergdahl. And then when asked later today on Twitter whether or not that was an accurate statement from someone within the White House, Chuck Todd said, that's what they told me. Is this the new narrative coming from the White House, that Bowe Bergdahl is being swift-boated? Are they seriously going to try to go at these vets?
It's worse than that. That's it. It's because it's about veterans. These are the men that were right there with Bowe Bergdahl. They saw him every day. They know what happened. They know what this guy was like. And to disparage these brave combat veterans is horrific. It is terrible, and I'm telling you right now, it shows the disdain, the arrogance and elitism of the Obama administration that they would disparage our vets like this. That is reprehensible, and I will say this, it is unforgivable. There's no kind of I'm sorry if you were offended sort of apology that gets you out of that kind of insult.
Is this, last quick question for you, Brad, is this just a way, I personally feel that this was the administration trying to rehabilitate their image, which had been so badly hurt with the VA scandal, and that they were so desperate that they picked this guy to do it off of because they've known about it. They've known about veterans discussing that apparently this wasn't the first time he walked off from his post either. Was it desperation, or is this a twofer because Gitmo's involved? Is there multiple birds, one stone here?
I think it's multiple birds, one stone. They could reduce the population. By the way, these 5 guys we let out, these should have been the last 5 guys out of Gitmo, if ever, if not feet first out of Gitmo. The lights should have been turned out after this. So I agree with you. I think they thought they had a neat kind of little foreign policy win. Right. And by the way, I believe it was Rush who said, you're going to see these small scale actions since the big stuff has been a disaster for Obama. So it's these little special operations things, try to get the Boko Haram girls back and all that kind of stuff on these lower levels to try to make Obama look good. They have no idea what they're doing in the White House, as evidenced by everything being a failure from Barack Obama and his people.
Wow. Brad Thor, a great piece that you wrote, and of course everything that you write is great, Brad. Thanks so much, my friend. It's good to talk to you.
You too. Thank you.